And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Week 15 Waiver Wire Show. My name is Dylan Burd, once again here on the Sports Burd podcast. And I just want to say, if you're watching this, you probably won your playoff matchup this week, first round. So congratulations. You were on to the second round, the semifinals in most leagues. So congratulations. I am in the semifinals of one out of my 3 leagues that I do. So my team's pretty stacked there. I'm hoping I get Antonio Gibson back. It's actually Sal's league, so really excited for that. But before we get started here, just wanted to let everyone know to like this video and be sure to comment as well. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps me out. In addition, if you're just new to this channel in general, I do my waiver wire show every Tuesday. This is obviously the second to last one, since next week will be the last one before the championship of fantasy football. And in addition, I also do my college football betting picks every single Friday. Got a lot of new stuff coming, so hopefully I'll be able to announce some of that this week, but I'm working on some of that. So be sure to stay tuned for that. I also do a NFL prop video show, prop bets, on Sal Vetri's YouTube channel, which is released every single Friday. So if you haven't seen that yet and you like prop betting, be sure to check that out every single Friday. It's a lot of fun and a lot more prop betting stuff coming soon. So again, be sure to stay tuned for that, possibly this week. So let's get right into things here with the AFC East. So we have the New York Jets, my favorite team. We've pretty much said the same thing about them every year. Denzel Mims missed week 14 due to a personal issue. We'll probably be back next week. And then in terms of the running back snap share, complete disaster, almost split 3 ways. Ty Johnson grabbing the most amount of snaps, 38.5%, 8 carries for 16 yards rushing. And then Frank Gore, 32.7% of the snaps, 8 for 23 rushing. Josh Adams, 23.1% of the snaps, 6 for 27 rushing, 2 for 3 receiving. And to that, I say that's all, folks. I don't really have anything to say about the Jets. I mean, there's nothing more you could do the rest of the season with this team. I don't trust anybody on this team with Adam Gase at coach. Darnold not playing well all season. Not going to be there in New York next year, but there's nobody. If you are moving on to the second round of the playoffs, there's no reason you should have a New York Jet in your lineup, and it's simple as that. Now, moving on here to the Miami Dolphins, we had Myles Gaskin, who missed week 14 because he was on the COVID list. Salvon Ahmed also missed week 14 due to injury. So hopefully we do get Gaskin back in week 15, but I haven't heard any updates with that, so I'm not sure what's going to be happening there. But I mean, if he's out and Ahmed is out, the running back snap share was Patrick Laird grabbing 50.6% of the snaps, 4 for 19 rushing, 1 for 4 receiving, and DeAndre Washington grabbing 46.8% of the snaps, 13 for 35 rushing, 2 for 17 receiving. So Washington seems to be the guy without Gaskin, without Ahmed. And my guy from Penn State, Mike Gesicki, the tight end, I had him on the list last week as a potential pickup. He's been playing great lately. 5 receptions for 65 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 targets. Unfortunately, he left the game, with what looks like could be a shoulder injury, possibly a dislocated shoulder, broken collarbone. I'm not sure if they've announced exactly what that is yet, but it definitely does not look good for him coming this week, which is extremely unfortunate because he was playing great. And I definitely know that guys who picked him up or had him in the lineup, that he definitely could have been a factor in getting you to the second round. So unfortunate to see him go down. Hope he gets well soon. Also, wide receivers, Devontae Parker exited the game with a leg injury, and Jakeem Grant, another wide receiver, exited the game with a hamstring injury. So the Dolphins are pretty depleted at all these positional units. I mean, running back, wide receiver, tight end, all these guys are hurt. And the Dolphins are a very good team. So it's just unfortunate to see that for a team that's fighting for a playoff spot. Now, it's cut off here by this banner on the bottom, but wide receiver / running back, I guess he gets a carry here and there. Lynn Bowden, one of my top pickups of the week, assuming all these guys are out. Gaskin, Ahmed, Parker, Grant, Gesicki. If all these guys are out, then Lynn Bowden is going to play a major role in this offense. He had 7 catches for 82 yards receiving on 9 targets this week, which led the team. The rookie from Kentucky, he's a great athlete, and you saw his usage in the offense increase once all these guys left the game. So somebody's got to catch the ball, somebody's got to get the targets, and that will probably be Lynn Bowden if all these guys are out next week. So Lynn Bowden is one of my top waiver wire pickups of the week. Now, moving on to the New England Patriots. All we've been talking about the running back snap shares, is just to highlight that before we move on. James White, 46.6%, 3 for 16 rushing, and 1 for 2 receiving. Damian Harris, 37.9%, 11 for 50 rushing, 1 for 0 receiving. Sony Michel, 24.1%, 7 for 22 rushing. Now, moving on to the Buffalo Bills, we had also the running back snap share that we've been looking at. Zach Moss grabbing 56.3% of the snaps, 13 carries for 43 yards rushing. Devin Singletary, 42.3%, 7 for 32 rushing, 1 for 2 receiving. Now, what I do want to focus on mainly here is the wide receivers. So with John Brown out, it's been a battle for who's going to be that number 2 receiver, and it has been Cole Beasley, 5 for 41 receiving on 10 targets, 23.8% of the target share. Cole Beasley definitely looks like a very good pickup, but he's only available in around a third of leagues, so most people have him at this point. Now, Gabriel Davis, if you're in a deeper league, he could be a decent pickup. Not saying a great pickup, a decent pickup. 3 for 19 and a touchdown receiving on 8 targets. Gabriel Davis, he's caught a bunch of touchdowns this year. So Davis as the third wide receiver on this Bills team with John Brown out, and Josh Allen playing phenomenal football. The Bills playing some of the best football in the NFL right now. Gabriel Davis in a very, very deep league could be a pickup as well. So just bear with me as I switch the screen here to the AFC North. 1 second here. We're having these problems since we've had the last 2 weeks. We're trying to, okay, now we're good. Okay. So we'll get AFC North up here. We have the Baltimore Ravens, week 14 running back snap share. We had J.K. Dobbins grabbing 61.7% of the snaps, 13 for 53 and 1 touchdown rushing. Gus Edwards, 26.7% of the snaps, 7 for 49 and 2 touchdowns rushing, 1 for 4 receiving. So J.K. Dobbins, clearly the best player on the Baltimore Ravens in the backfield, I'm saying. And it's great to see him finally getting as many snaps as he should. I mean, it's taken this long, and it's pretty clear that he is the best running back on this team. So if you have J.K. Dobbins, he is going to be a huge help for you going forward. Cincinnati Bengals. Hopefully, some of you people that are still in have Joe Mixon stashed on that IR, because it does look like he will return in week 15, which is great to see. He's been out for a ton of weeks with that foot injury on IR. He should be back in week 15. Quarterback Brandon Allen also left the game with a knee injury, but the Bengals think he'll be fine for next week. Now, the Bengals receivers actually were producing a decent amount with Allen, not as much as with Burrow at QB, obviously, but Allen kind of did hold down that fort a little bit, so hopefully he does play. That'd be good for those receivers over there, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Now, moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, we have running back James Conner returns from the COVID list. That was obviously a little scary to see James Conner get COVID, as he's a former, as he's a cancer survivor. But he comes back and he's given, less snaps than Jalen Samuel. That's understandable. 1, because they were losing the game. Jalen Samuel's this guy who catches more passes. And 2, coming off that COVID list, probably just to get his conditioning up. But that being said, I would have expected James Conner's snaps to go up a lot next week, but now they're saying he has a quad injury, which is not good at all. So just to recap what exactly we saw in week 14, Jalen Samuels, 47.3% of the snaps, 4 for 15 rushing, 3 for 18 receiving. James Conner, 41.8% of the snaps, 10 for 18 rushing. Benny Snell, 9.1% of the snaps, 3 for 14 rushing. So Benny Snell, again, going to be another, I feel like we've said this a million times this year. He could be a top pickup this week, depending on what the status of James Conner is. That's going to be something that we have to monitor as the week goes on. Now, moving on to the Cleveland Browns. So I know I talked about the Ravens already, but what a game that was last night. Baker Mayfield's in his natural habitat, basically a Big 12 shootout last night. One of the best games I've seen in quite some time. I tweeted out probably the best regular season game we've seen since Chiefs-Rams in 2018. So that was amazing to see last night. Now, wide receiver Rashard Higgins, 6 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown receiving on 10 targets, which led the team 22.7% of the target share. Wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones, 3 for 74 receiving on 5 targets. I don't really think you could rely on any of these guys going forward for fantasy, but just wanted to point that out, as they really haven't had a second receiver consistently since Odell Beckham has gotten hurt. Now, something I do want to highlight is the Browns defense. I hope people have realized this in advance, because they have great matchups for the next 2 weeks. If you're a league that does play with defenses like most do, week 15, they play the Giants. Week 16, they play the Jets. So those could really, really help you out if you do roster the Browns defense. Now, moving on here to the AFC South, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. The only thing I have to say about them is they benched Mike Glennon for Gardner Minshew. It's about time. 18 of 31 passing for 178 yards and a touchdown. Will start again in week 15. I got to think this helps out some Jacksonville receivers, but not much to talk about for the rest of the team. Now, for the Indianapolis Colts, week 14 running back snap share, we had Jonathan Taylor grabbing 54.2% of the snaps, and he's been on a tear lately. 20 carries for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing, 2 for 15 receiving. Nyheim Hines, 37.3, I should say, percent of the snaps, 7 for 58 rushing, 4 for 17 receiving. Jordan Wilkins, only 10.2% of the snaps, 1 carry for 3 yards rushing, 1 catch for 4 yards receiving. T.Y. Hilton turned back the clock a little bit, 5 for 86 and 2 touchdowns receiving on 7 targets, led the team with a 25.9% target share. Now, T.Y. Hilton, last few weeks, he's been tearing it up. He has 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games, and maybe him and Phillip Rivers kind of found some chemistry, and maybe T.Y. Hilton is not washed. Maybe he could be legit coming down the stretch here. So again, he's not that available in across leagues, but if he is, T.Y. Hilton might be an option you could look for. Now, in terms of the Tennessee Titans, nothing much to say except for tight end Jonnu Smith returned with 2 catches for 20 yards receiving on just 2 targets. Jonnu Smith kind of has fallen off the face of the earth, very touchdown dependent since the beginning of the year. So not much else to say for the Titans. Now, the Texans, we got a lot to talk about with the Texans here. Running back David Johnson on the COVID list, missed this week. Wide receiver Will Fuller with a suspension, missed this game, out for the year. Brandon Cooks with a foot and neck injury, and Randall Cobb with a toe injury. Everyone missed week 14. As a result, Texans get absolutely blown out by the Chicago Bears. Not the best look for them. Now, we mentioned that David Johnson did miss the game, so the running back snap share as a result, Duke Johnson getting 46.9% of the snaps, 8 for 26 rushing, 2 for 53 receiving. And then we have Buddy Howell, who is a running back from Florida Atlantic, a guy I had never heard of going into this week, 34.4% of the snaps, 11 for 42 rushing, and 1 for 3 receiving. And then we have CJ Prosise getting 18.8% of the snaps, 1 for 2 rushing, 1 for 10 receiving. Now, I expect David Johnson to be back next week. They said he was just on the COVID list because he was a close contact. So he will be back for week 15. Not much to worry about with the running back situation there. Now, the wide receivers, Randall Cobb, that toe injury was pretty serious, so he could miss more time. Brandon Cooks, who knows, I'm sure will be questionable the whole week. And Will Fuller, obviously, after the season. Well, who's going to be the number 1 wide receiver? It's going to be Kiki Kute. 3 receptions for 24 yards and a touchdown receiving on 3 targets. But the guy who actually got more targets and more receptions, who I won't consider the number 1 guy, I still think Kute is ahead of them, but Chad Hansen, 7 catches for 56 yards on 7 targets in this game. Those 7 targets led the team. So Chad Hansen, a decent option actually going forward. This guy was a draft pick of the Jets way back when. I remember he barely, I don't think he even caught a ball for the Jets, and now he is producing for the Houston Texans. So another guy you could look at going forward. Now, moving on to the AFC West here, as we get this screen up, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing to report in terms of waiver wire, in terms of injuries. Same thing with the Chargers. Nothing to report there. And the Raiders and the Broncos are the 2 teams from this division that we will talk about. Running back Josh Jacobs returned for week 14 with an ankle injury. 13 carries for 49 yards rushing, 3 for 25 receiving. Now, wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, a guy who's been in this podcast a few times this year, 5 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown receiving on 9 targets, which was 20% of the target share. He's still available in most leagues, and this is a guy that you can't rely on, but you could plug him in here and there, and hopefully he does have one of these performances. So again, if you're in need of a wide receiver, Nelson Aguilar is floating out there. Not a bad option at all. Now, in terms of the Denver Broncos, tight end Noah Fant left the game with an illness. Now, another Penn State guy that went off this week, wide receiver KJ Hamler, 2 catches for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns receiving on 3 targets. Wouldn't consider him a huge deal on waivers, but again, if you're in a very, very deep league and you're in dire need of a wide receiver, Hamler could be an option. At least you could hope for a deep touchdown from him. You got to see the speed on this guy. Has legit 4.27, 4.25 speed, and he just absolutely burned Rasul Douglas this week on the Carolina Panthers. It was pretty funny. If you see that video, you could probably look it up, but he's a great deep threat. He's a guy that's going to blow right past the defense, a guy that you could just send deep and hope he run. He doesn't even need to make a move. He just could blow by someone. It's like a Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill type thing with Hamler. I think Hamler will be very, very good in the future in the NFL as a deep threat. But, for this week, if you need like a home run and you're in a very, very deep league and there aren't a lot of guys available, Hamler could be an option. Other than that, I don't think you rely on him too much because Drew Lock played his best game of the year against the Panthers. Other than that, he hasn't been very good this year. Now, moving on here to the NFC East, we have the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys, nothing to report there in terms of waiver wire, in terms of injuries. Have that for a lot of teams this week. Just feel like there isn't a lot of news this late in the season. But New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones returned from his hamstring injury for Week 14, 11 for 21 passing, 127 yards passing as well, no touchdowns. And moving on to the Washington football team, running back Antonio Gibson missed Week 14 with a toe injury. Doesn't look good for him in Week 15, but hopefully he could possibly play. Now, quarterback Alex Smith also left the game with a calf injury. He is questionable for Week 15. If he doesn't play, it will be Dwayne Haskins at quarterback for Washington. Now, looking at the Week 14 running back snap share with Gibson out, J.D. McKissic grabbing 64.5% of the snaps, 11 for 68 rushing, 2 for 18 receiving. Peyton Barber, 54.8% of the snaps, 12 for 37 rushing, 2 for 1 receiving. So again, both of these guys are waiver wire options. I'm assuming at least McKissic is almost fully owned in most leagues at this point. If Washington is down in the game next week, McKissic's going to catch a lot of passes, so he could be really, really valuable. Peyton Barber, on the other hand, will get you those 1 to 2 yard touchdowns potentially. Tight end Logan Thomas, another high target week, 6 for 43 receiving on 7 targets, led the team 24.1% of the target share. So if you need a tight end, Thomas could potentially still be out there. Now, in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles, we had quarterback Jalen Hurts started at quarterback and, in place of Carson Wentz, and he played really, really well, beating the 10-2 Saints. And Jalen Hurts going 17 of 30 through the air, 167 yards, 1 touchdown passing, 18 carries for 106 yards rushing. So good day for Jalen Hurts. And as a result, you really saw the offense kind of have a kickstart. Miles Sanders had a huge day, and it was great to see that. Great to see the offense open up with Hurts at quarterback. Now, tight end Dallas Goedert goes 4 for 43 receiving on 6 targets, led the team 23.1% target share. Goedert, as I mentioned, is going to be a pretty great option at tight end going forward for the rest of the year on that Eagles team, even with Zach Ertz back. I mean, at this stage of their career, Goedert is a better tight end than Ertz. I mean, it's pretty clear. So that's all we got for the NFC East. But moving on to the next division, which is the NFC North, we have the Green Bay Packers. Robert Tonyan has been a beast the last 4 games. He's a touchdown in the last 4 games, 5 for 36 and a touchdown receiving on 5 targets in this game. And Chicago Bears, nothing to report there. Minnesota Vikings, nothing to report there. And the Detroit Lions, wide receiver Kenny Golladay missed Week 14 again with a hip injury, but we got DeAndre Swift, the rookie running back from Georgia, returning back from an illness, concussion. He was dealing with a bunch of stuff. He returned for Week 14. He got the most snap share, 50.8%, 7 for 24 and a touchdown rushing, 4 for 26 receiving. Adrian Peterson behind him grabbing 25.4% of the snaps. Kerryon Johnson grabbing 22% of the snaps, and vulturing by getting that 1-yard touchdown, stealing it from DeAndre Swift. So other than that, not much to talk about here, especially with Swift back. Hopefully we do see Golladay back at some point within the next 2 weeks. Now, quarterback Matthew Stafford, also do want to highlight, he left the game with a rib injury. They said his status is in doubt for next week. So if we do not get Stafford, we will get Chase Daniel. So just a thing to look out for as the week moves on. Now, moving on here to the NFC South, we have the Tampa Bay Bucks, who had an interesting running back situation. We have Ronald Jones, who broke his pinky, and Leonard Fournette was a healthy scratch. So Jones underwent surgery to put pins in his pinky. And if he is out for next week, which they don't know yet, I assume Fournette will probably be back. But if he's not, it'll be the LaShawn McCoy and Keyshawn Vaughn show. Keyshawn Vaughn, the rookie out of Vanderbilt. Just keep an eye on that. I feel like Ronald Jones should be able to play with the broken pinky, but given the fact that he has surgery on it, who really knows? I mean, if it's a surgically repaired thing, then it may not be able to happen for him. But we'll have to monitor that as the week goes on. If not, Vaughn could be a pretty interesting option, actually. But moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, wide receiver Julio Jones missed Week 14 with that hamstring injury that's been nagging him all year. The running back snap share, not much to talk about. I mean, Ito Smith and Todd Gurley are pretty much splitting. It's late in the year. Todd Gurley has had knee problems the last few weeks, so he's not really getting many carries. Only had 6 carries for 19 yards, 2 catches for 12 yards receiving, compared to Ito Smith, who had 11 carries for 42 yards, 1 for 3 receiving. Now, wide receiver Russell Gage, 5 for 82 receiving on 7 targets. So if Julio Jones misses another week, Gage could be another possible plug-in option at wide receiver for you. But I'm not too high on Gage going forward. I believe Julio will probably be back next week. I know, he's had this nagging hamstring all season, but we'll have to see what happens with that. In terms of the Saints, quarterback Drew Brees missed week 14 with fractured ribs. Quarterback Taysom Hill filled in once again for the fourth straight week, 28 for 38 passing, 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, 5 for 33 rushing. So Hill played all right. Pretty solid for a backup quarterback. Can't complain with that. Hopefully Drew Brees will be back for week 15. I know there is rumors that he should be. Now, with the Carolina Panthers, Christian McCaffrey missed week 14 with a shoulder or thigh injury, both actually, and he could return in week 15. They play on Saturday against the Packers. If not, Mike Davis will be that guy once again. Now, moving on to our last division, we have the NFC West, where we have the Seattle Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals. Not much to talk about there in terms of injuries, in terms of waiver wire, but we got some stuff to talk about with the San Francisco 49ers. Wide receiver Deebo Samuel left week 14 with a hamstring injury. So, if you have Brandon Ayuk, congrats, because Deebo Samuel is going to miss the rest of the season. And Ayuk, he caught 10 passes this week. He's going to be a target monster with Deebo out. So another injury to talk about is Raheem Mostert. Injured his ankle, and they're not really sure his status going forward. I know he's had that ankle injury, kind of just the entire year nagging him. But the week 14 running back snap share, we had Mostert at 50%, 14 for 65 rushing, 2 for 5 receiving. Jeff Wilson, 47.4% of the snaps, 11 for 31 rushing, and a touchdown, 1 for 13 receiving. Jeff Wilson, one of my top waiver wire pickups of the week. Why would he not? Raheem Mostert, if he misses this game, Jeff Wilson will probably get the start against this Dallas Cowboys defense, which me and cannot defend the run to save their lives. I have bet so many props this year of running backs against the Las Vegas Raiders, and they have hit almost every single time, if not every single time. So Wilson, as a result, one of my top waiver wire pickups of the week. He has a very easy matchup against Dallas next week, and I think he has a potential to go off and be a guy that could potentially win guys leagues. Now, moving on to the Los Angeles Rams. Speaking of guys that could win fantasy teams leagues, Cam Akers, 80.6% of the snaps, 29 for an astounding 171 rushing yards, 2 for 23 receiving. Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown only getting 9.7% of the snaps each. I spoke about Cam Akers last week. I said he was a must grab. I said he will win leagues. That remains for this week. He's a must grab if he's somehow still available. I think he's available in still like 33% of leagues, which is crazy. So if he's available, you must grab him. He will win leagues along with Jeff Wilson. So those are two of my top waiver wire pickups in the NFL this week, coming from the 49ers, Jeff Wilson, coming from the Rams, Cam Akers. I know Akers is owned in most leagues. Wilson is available in most leagues, but make sure you add each of them if they are available. So that'll do it for our second to last waiver wire show of the season. Can't believe we're already at this point. Just to remind you, if you don't already, be sure to follow me on Twitter at sports_Burd. Be sure to like this video if you haven't already. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And if you're listening on Apple, on Spotify, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to give a rating and a review. That would really help me out a lot. And just stay tuned because I have my college football picks coming on Friday on this channel. I have my NFL prop video on Sal Vetri's YouTube channel coming on Friday as well. And I also have some potential new stuff coming this week that I'm just waiting to announce. Gotta get some stuff done this week to make sure that happens. But if not this week, it will be next week. So stay tuned for that. It'll be really exciting. And good luck, everyone, in the playoffs this week. And good luck with your waiver wire bids.